Was Charlene running?
No. Judy Pollock is supposed to be running today, one of our famous Olympians. But we haven't seen the second woman cross the line yet.
No, we've been keeping a pretty close eye while the interviews have been up and during the breaks, but Colleen did it particularly well. And that drink station is a long way back down the line, so they're going to be coming in for quite some time yet. And just while we have a couple of minutes, I'd like to thank you all for coming in this morning. Chris Wardlaw, Derek Clayton, Rhonda Mallender and Steve Monaghetti. Steve, your next commitment's the Commonwealth Games, I take it?
That's right, yes, and I hope I don't take quite as long as these people, and maybe we'll run a little bit quicker. It's a great effort by these people, and I've got a lot of training to do between now and then.
Exactly how much?
Too much. There's always too much to do for marathons.
There's the second woman crossing line. Sorry to interrupt.
That's good.
Yep, that's Sally Knight. Some of her students from Scotch College will be giving her some support when she goes back to school.
Yes, Sally is an American living in Melbourne and teaching at Scotch. Her best 2:44.25, but a little bit outside that today. Not really surprising in view of the conditions. What's on the plate for you, Rhonda, now? Where do you go?
I'm just recovered from a broken foot, and every day my training's getting better and better, so hopefully a marathon next year. I'm going to run and win a marathon next year.
Under less windy conditions than we have had today, I guess.
Hopefully.
You can't choose those sort of things, though. You can choose a race and aim for it, but you can't choose the weather.
This course, is it too windy? I mean, it's very open, Chris, isn't it? Especially around the bay there.
Yeah, we've had uneven conditions over the 12 years. I mean, some years it's been magnificent, and as Rhonda says, I mean, you just can't pick the conditions, and the course has now got a tradition to it. I wouldn't be chasing a different course to get better conditions. I think it's part of the race.
Courses like this favourable, or do you prefer an out and back course?
Well, I personally prefer out and back because you can talk about time-tested nature and comparability against other courses. But what happens is once a course becomes time-tested, people can compare themselves over a number of years on this course. And it's a pretty time-tested course now.
The course they had for the 56 Olympics was an out and back course. It was Dandenong Road up Ferntree Gully Road and back. How would you rate that as a course?
Fairly tough. I mean,
A lot more hills.
Yeah, a lot more hills. The really fast courses are basically flat, and that weather, I think, is a much bigger factor.
If we get the Games in '96, where do you think they'll have the marathon course? Would it be this one?
No, I think it's actually going from the MCG along a part of the Yarra course. Talking to Ted Paul, it seems that it'll be in the centre of town district, probably incorporating a little bit of this down towards Albert Park Lane.
And look at all these people running, battling to beat 3 hours. Isn't it great to see there's such a big group of them all finishing? They're having to queue up.
Hopefully these people had their splits for 3 hours and they're now kicking home in a well-judged race.
You find most runners do like out and back, because if you have trying conditions like the guys had today, where you get a strong wind, well, for at least half the race, that's an advantage to you. But in a course like this, where you've got this headwind all day today, it makes it awfully tough.
There's a smile of a sub-3 hour.
Looks like he's done it, doesn't it?
Right.
Like
That's right. Let's see the next 30 seconds, how many smiles we can produce.
Yes, these people will be kicking hard now. I'll be able to see that clock.
It makes it all worthwhile. But everybody that goes in the race has a goal, whether it's just to finish or whether it's a time, maybe to beat a friend. You go in it with a goal.
It's a really good excuse to have a hot bath later today.
And a few cold beers?
Yes, not necessarily in that order.
At the same time.
And sometimes a massage helps too.
That's it.
They're 3 hours. Bad luck for those. But then again, some of the people will be aiming to beat 3.5 hours now.
As the race actually started, as we mentioned in our telecast, a minute and a half early, which caught us a bit by surprise here. And we're seeing the 3 hour finishes in our telecast time. It was due to start at 8 o'clock. It actually started at 7:58:34. So the watches weren't exactly synchronised down there at Frankston. I guess some of the runners would be disappointed they hadn't broken 3 hours here, but a great effort nonetheless.
I think it's good to remember that there'll be another 2 hours of people running. So if people are around town or down along the bay, they could get out and give a cheer to people who are in the 5 hour group, and that's a long time on your legs.
Well, the straggler's certainly down near the bayside, and I think that station is round about Brighton somewhere, or thereabouts. Got a long way to go yet.
We should also thank all the people who support the race.
Yes, exactly.
All the people at drink stations and the medical staff, and headed by Peter Larkins, and Ted's group in general, who really work all year round for this race.
Well, Ted's done a splendid effort, because I was talking to him yesterday at the marathon breakfast, and he was just delighted that he was able to entice these runners from Japan, one of the best marathon running countries in the world now, and he had some of the cream of their crop. And of course the Japanese making it 1, 2, 3, which we've never had in the marathon before.
Normally Ted rings up all around the world, and the Japanese rang him, which was a nice change.
Yes.
It was very difficult for a race director in Melbourne, because it's not a race that a lot of the top athletes want to run in. And I know Ten gets awfully frustrated trying to get some of these top names out to this run, so it's a big credit to the guy that he was able to get some of these Japanese out this year.
Well, there's an awful lot of marathons in the world you can run.
Well, that's right. It's about one every week almost. But the top athletes now want to go for the big exposure races, because that's when they're under contract to the shoe companies, and the shoe companies are very interested in seeing their top athletes running the
London, Boston, New York.
Exactly. That's the big one.
But Melbourne's making its mark in the sort of the second echelon of races, and it's really a community run anyway. It's for the other 4,000 rather than the top dozen or so.
Yeah, the big advantage of getting top athletes is you get the world class publicity for your race. But as you say, I totally agree with that. Marathons are not for the top athletes so much, they're for the many thousands who compete.
Well, the race is going to be put on the map in Japan now, isn't it? With
Yes.
top 3 finishers over the line, all coming from Japan.
Yeah.
So hopefully, at least in Japan, the race is going to get a lot of notoriety and recognition.
Especially with Saul winning it, because he's one of the better well-known marathon runners, and we should get some good footage over there on television.
Ted was telling me that back home in Japan, he is regarded somewhat of a hero, or folk hero, if you like. For him to take it out here today in 2:18:14. 2:18:14 doesn't sound that impressive, but after buffeting the runners took in the early part of the race especially, that's a very good time.
Well, it's interesting with him, because when he runs a great time, he doesn't win. It's
right.
kind of interesting, because he hasn't won that many races, so he's been very unlucky in many aspects. He's been a great athlete, and as I said before, it's great to see him win this particular race.
Well, his fastest time, 2:8:55, was in a race that he came second to Seiko in.
Well, that was virtually a dead heat. And he got bitten by a
Kick
a
finish.
hair. It was almost a hair, wasn't it? They
I know
couldn't
how
split
it
him.
feels.
I don't think a sprint over the last 300 is the ideal way of finishing a marathon, that's for sure.
No. That's what I said. For him to run so fast and be beaten by hair, I can't think of a worse way to be beaten in a marathon.
I think there's been a few more women across the line, but unfortunately we haven't been able to pick them up.
There were about 8% of the runners today were women. 1,300 were running the marathon for the first time. We had a total entry of over 3,800, which is pretty close to a record. And of course, some of the interesting stats to come out of the race, the top 3 finishers all coming from Japan. And the first Australian, Mark Boucher, he came in 5th place. So a lot of firsts in the Melbourne Marathon for 1989. Probably some of the worst weather conditions we've had, but nonetheless, a day on which many people would be proud of their efforts. A lot of runners returning personal bests. And that just about takes us out of our coverage. I'd like to thank you all for coming in. Chris Wardlaw, Derek Clayton, Rhonda Mallender and Steve Monaghetti.
Thanks, Peter.
We thank you all
It's
for your
been lots of
comments. And of course, out on the road, we had Michael Roberts and Trevor Vincent. So we thank them for their efforts as well. I think they got the worst of the weather. But a great effort by the Japanese, wasn't it?
Yeah, certainly dominated the race today, taking out the trifecta.
And it's good to see an old man win the race too, isn't it? 36-year-old.
So they're still coming in. They will be for quite some time. We hope you've enjoyed our coverage, but there's plenty more sport to come on 7, because Sports World, Racing with Bill Collins and Roy Higgins in just a moment.